My ex-boyfriend found out the truth behind my cheating and he's extremely upset now. Original post, February 22, 2024. I realize it's impossible to try to describe what happened in the title. Just going to clarify that it is nothing like it sounds, and that the post is long. Okay, when I, 34 female, was 14, I finally got my life back on track after a rough childhood. I lost my dad, was bullied in school and blah blah blah, and simply had some rough years. But I changed schools, I met my group friends and someone who a couple of months later became my first boyfriend, Tomas, 34 male now. I was really happy, I felt like I had found my place finally. I was doing good in school, had a job, and at least 2 weekends a month, my group of friends and I would leave the town to go to a city in the coast or the capital city, just 2 or 3 hours away on car. I'm from Argentina, and we would go to see our favorite national rock bands. We loved it, we were big fans. It was the coolest thing to do back then in my country. Doing pogo, pushing people to get to the front fence, screaming the lyrics, etc. It doesn't seem important, but it is. Basically, when I was 16, my friend group and I headed to the capital to go see one of our favorite bands, Callejeros, at a place called Cremanon. I'm not going to explain what happened, just going to say that the biggest tragedy of rock happened that night. Lots of victims and lots of people that ended up hurt. I ended up hurt. I still have a big scar on my thigh. 2 of my closest friends passed away that night. It was a big mess. I can never explain what I felt. I remember I started to go out every weekend. I would get drunk up my ass. I avoided talking about it at all. I would leave the room when someone even spoke about it. I kept pretending that everything was fine. That I was fine. In case you're wondering, getting alcohol in Latin America being a minor is not hard, much less in a small town. Plus, I'm from a town where, for some reason, we also go out on Thursdays, and in Latin America, we usually leave clubs and parties around 6 a.m. on Fridays. I would show up drunk at school. But that was common, so no one realized. Tomas was there, supporting me through everything. Working hard to get a smile out of me every day, trying to get me to open up, but not pushing me too much either, hugging me when I needed to. And well, our relationship grew stronger, despite me going into a darker hole. When we graduated, we moved to the same city to keep studying, and I decided that it was time for me to cut the bullshit. I got a part-time job and worked hard to get the best grades, got new friends, stopped partying so much. I thought I was fine, or at least I wanted to convince myself that I was, but with time, I realized that I wasn't. We were like 20, and I remember I started to drink again. I hated myself, I felt miserable, I had nightmares at night, and I felt even worse because I thought I was being like ungrateful. I survived, at least, in my mind, feeling like this was pathetic. Mental health, well, we didn't speak much about it then. It was a taboo to go to therapy. During this time, I started to treat Tomas badly. I was mistreating. No, I never hit him or anything like that, but I would often yell at him or call him names when he was just trying to help. I kept pushing him away. I realized he deserved better than me. Tomas was always an angel, of course, he did. It did not make sense to me why he was still supporting me. When he found me passed out after so much drinking on the floor, he would take me to the bathroom, bathe me, dress me and put me in bed, cook for me, and clean my apartment. It only made me feel worse. I had a great man, and I was treating him like shit. He simply deserved better than me. I tried to tell him that we needed to break up, but he refused. Tomas refused and told me he would stick next to me no matter what. But I only got worse, and I felt like I was going to drag him with me, and I couldn't stand the idea of seeing him with me. So, after thinking about it, I made a choice. I did the only thing I knew he wouldn't forgive. Well, I told him I did it. I told him I cheated on him with a guy from my work. A friend he was jealous of. He was upset, confused, angry, sad, and felt betrayed, of course. It was heartbreaking to see him like that, but I knew it was necessary. He was much better without me. I was just a dead weight back then. Anyway, he left. I simply did not see him again afterwards. I didn't call him either, didn't search for him even though I wanted to. After I graduated, I got a full-time job, and I got tired of feeling miserable. My mom got me in contact with survivors. I'm going to clarify, many survivors had killed themselves or tried to. Most of us ended up with serious mental health issues, as you can see, and they ended up convincing me to start therapy. I stopped drinking for good, and well, it was all really hard. Finally stop avoiding reality and facing my problems, accepting that I needed help. All the process of opening up was hard, but worth it. Countless are the nights where I just stared at the phone, wondering if I should call Tomas or not. I wanted to call him, tell him I had lied, apologize for everything, and thank him for everything he did for me. I have to say, Tomas did call to check up a few times, but I always decided not to pick up. I heard a lot of voicemails from him while he was drunk, asking how I could do that to him, but he would still say that he loved me, and he asked me how I was. I forced myself to never answer. With time, his calls stopped, I got better and started to go back to my old self slowly. I started dating again, started to have more fun, and eventually got married and had a daughter. Life did get better for me, but all that goes up, goes down, and my husband ended up cheating on me. Karma's a bitch, I know. I divorced him, and I was able to buy my own house and got primary custody of our daughter. My daughter has been the light of my eyes and, even with everything that happened lately, for her, I would never let myself fall into that depression again. I was and still am happier than ever. Anyway, I got in contact again with Tomas about 5 months ago. He found me on Instagram and just sent me a DM, and we started to chat, to catch up about life. He also had a kid, a 5-year-old son, but he's not with his mother. It was a product of a one-night stand, and they have a good co-parenting relationship. He has him 2 weeks a month. The thing is, we started to meet up again. Just as friends at first, but then we started to hook up. We would go on dates, but we never talked about the cheating. But finally, I confessed that my feelings for him were back. Tomas told me he was feeling the same, but he wasn't sure about starting anything again with someone who had cheated. That's when I chose to finally open up about what happened in the past, about how I was feeling and how I didn't want to drag him with me, so that's why I chose to lie about cheating on him. Tomas was shocked. He got upset and I remember how he left. He called me later and told me I shouldn't have lied to him about something like cheating, that I should have just told him that I didn't want to be with him anymore. I explained again my side and told him I'd rather him to think real bad of me, to be real sad for a while but eventually move on, than to drag him with me, to my dark hole. He just told me that he was an adult that could make his own choices, and that he just wanted to be there for me. I told him I didn't regret what I did, but I apologized for hurting him and hung up, and we haven't talked ever since. He called me yesterday, but I didn't pick up. I wasn't ready to talk with him yet. I have been processing all this information. Despite not being the best way, all these years I believed I had done him a favor with this. That even though it hurt him, it was the best for him. Also, I was not even close to being good enough to be in a relationship. I honestly don't know. I do know it wasn't the best way, but I had no strength to reject him. I knew he would have been able to convince me that he wanted to stay with me despite everything. Update, February 27, 2024. Unfortunately, my post fall on the side full of red pill incels and annoying bots that didn't even read or couldn't comprehend it, and I realized just by reading the first sentence. I don't really care, didn't even bother to read those comments, to be honest. But I couldn't get much useful advice, which was what I was looking for, but I got a few, and I appreciate them, honestly. Anyway, I'm going to start by clarifying that everything I wrote about the Croman tragedy I only wrote it for context. It was over 19 years ago. I only wrote it to explain the place where I was, how my mind worked, and how I was feeling. I would never ever come to ask advice about something like that on Reddit, come on. Be serious for the love of God. I'm saying this for all the people who acted like psychiatrists and psychologists and even tried to make a diagnosis out of a Reddit post. Seriously, even if it was with good intentions, is dangerous and really irresponsible to do so. I don't have PTSD, I searched for professional help after graduating university. I graduated 13 years ago. I saw psychiatrists and psychologists, and I never got diagnosed with PTSD. I had depression and anxiety. I could never explain the amount of pain I felt after the tragedy, and how it only got worse because I didn't search for help right away. It took a lot of work, years of therapy, and support from friends and family to finally make me get back to my old self. Not fully like I wanted to, but on a point, I didn't even recognize myself. I'm saying that for the ones who told me I was toxic, and I guess I was on a point. But the others were never the problem. I was so self-destructive back then that I thought the best would be to push everyone again. But like I said, that was so long ago. And I'm not even close to being like that. I repeat, I wouldn't be so irresponsible to get into another relationship, get married and have a child. When Tomas and I first started to date again, it was like the first years of our relationship. Healthy, fun, and full of love. Not like the last year of our relationship. That was definitely the worst year of my life. I've talked about it in therapy for years and years, and I put it behind me years ago. now is just something that marked me, but that is my past. It left me with lots and lots of problems, but well, it is what it is. I survived and should be thankful for it. Anyway, now to the point. Tomas and I met up on Saturday, and things went well. We had a long talk. We talked for hours about everything. He opened up about how hurt he felt, how awful the months after our breakup were, and how he felt like I was making the choice for him. I told him that I was not only doing it for him, but also for me. I couldn't be in a relationship back then. How could I? Traumatized for whatever reason I was, back then I was so self-destructive and not nice to be around. I also told him how he might have wanted to stay, but I didn't want him to. I reminded him that I tried to break up with him many times, and he simply wouldn't listen to my reasons and apologized for it. But he also explained how he loved me more than anything and couldn't leave in that situation. And how even after he thought I had cheated, he was scared about me trying to kill myself. Every time there was a news story about one of the survivors of Crewmen who had killed themselves, he would freak out thinking it was me. I told him I loved him so much back then and now, but at least for me, it was not healthy to maintain a relationship. It was toxic and it wouldn't have helped any of us at all. We apologized to each other, and I clarified that I want to leave all of this behind and to just be us, to finally put this in the past. He agreed. We cried, but it was tears of happiness. I hadn't been so happy in a while. I guess deep down it was what I always wanted, ever since we broke up. To be okay again and to be like we used to. I guess that I never stopped loving him, and he never stopped loving me. I always wonder where he was or if he was okay, wonder what would have happened if things had been different. But now I don't have to wonder anymore, because we're together now and that's all that matters. But one step at a time. Story 2, Ada for not allowing my parents to sleep in the same bed? Original post, July 11, 2023. I think you know where this is going, but there's no definitive answer on who's in the wrong. Also, for simplicity's sake, I'll be saying parents, but it is my mother and stepfather. My mother and stepdad have been together since I was little. So, I'm a 25-year-old woman with 2 older siblings, both male. When we were growing up, we were never allowed girlfriends or boyfriends to spend the night, which I felt was fair enough. When my brothers got to about 16, however, their girlfriends were allowed to spend nights, but they had to sleep in the spare room. Again, fair. That makes sense to me. I was always somewhat of a tomboy, so, as you can imagine, teen boys didn't show much interest in me romantically, so I didn't get my first boyfriend until I was already 18. My parents wouldn't allow him to spend the night at all, despite us both being over 18. I wouldn't have minded if my brothers had been held to that standard, but I felt as if they were favored over me. It isn't even because they disliked my boyfriend at the time either. Everyone seemed to love him. That relationship didn't last more than 6-ish months, so I dropped it after a while. I got with my now fiancé when I was 22 and we've been engaged for a year. We're getting married in only a few months. Still, just like every time before, my parents wouldn't allow him to spend the nights until a few months after we got engaged after I brought it up to them. It wasn't a conflict, but they knew I was irritated and allowed him to start using the spare room. We moved in together not long after, so it didn't really matter. Now, I may be an asshole. My mother asked about wedding planning, the first time she even contacted me since the move, and I told her I still had a lot to sort out, but I was getting through it, and she practically insisted on coming up to me and having a week of mother-daughter bonding time where she could help me with wedding planning. My fiancé isn't a very social person and is happy to be the money bags behind my wedding decisions. He just likes to give little opinions, and I'm sure to include them when he does. My parents arrived and we spent the first day going out to dinner. I'd like to point out that the two aren't married and are steadfast that they won't be getting married again. Both of them divorced already, my stepdad twice. So, as the night was slowing down, they asked to be shown to their room. I directed my mother to one guest room and my stepfather to another. We have a 3-bedroom with no kids yet, so we have the space. My mother said that there was plenty of room in one for them both and instructed my stepdad to come in with her. I explained that, just like she told me, it was my house, and I didn't want them sharing a bed in my house. I basically repeated word for word what she would tell me when I'd complain about my brothers getting better treatment than me when it came to their partner. I told her that actually, they were in the same position I was in because neither of us were married. She tried saying it was different because they had been together for almost 20 years. I told them that it didn't matter because this is my house and my decision is final, just like how my mother would shut down any discussions about it back then. I was sure to mention how my brothers were allowed their partners and I wasn't, but she claimed I was making it up. They stayed the night and left for home the next day, which I preferred because I was happy wedding planning on my own, and I haven't heard from them since. My grandmother has called to tell me off for it though, so I'm wondering if I am in the wrong? Am I the asshole? Edit, same post, July 12th, next day. A lot of people are confused. At my mother's house, we were not allowed to ever sleep in the same bed. Ever. Only months after we got engaged did my mother allow him to sleep in the spare room. Also, I said I don't mind the rules they have. It's their home, but it was the double standard for me. I had to wait until 25 to have my fiancé stay at my house when my brothers could have whoever they wanted from 16. We were engaged by the time they let him. I was no longer a child, and it's not like I've been holding on to resentment for years after it stopped, as some misguided people claim. It was months ago it ended. Also, my intention was never to make them sleep the whole week separately. It was initially, and now the power is in my hands. Do you see the error of your ways? If they did, we could have moved on and laughed about it, and they would have slept in the same bed. Because they didn't and doubled down and started getting aggressive with me, claiming I was making things up, I stuck to it. I know I am being a bit of an asshole, but am I the asshole in the situation I'm in? Relevant comments. Commenter 1, are your brothers your full brothers or half brothers? OP, no, my brothers are my whole blood brothers. Our parents started divorcing before I was born. Commenter 2, it's in the past, grow up. OP, what do you mean that's in the past? It was months ago, not years. Commenter 3, you're being petty, they've been together 25 years and have had sex, they presumably just didn't want you or your brothers to have sex as teens. OP, way to miss the point of the whole post. I never disagreed with the teen rule. What I disagreed with was the sexism and that I had to wait until I was engaged at 25 to even have them sleep in the spare room. Commenter 4, they could be common law married. Also, you could have just offered it as a joke. OP, I'm in the UK. We don't have that. Also, I was more than hoping and even intended for it to be a joke. I was hoping my mother would see her hypocrisy and we could laugh about it. I didn't intend on actually making them sleep separately. Only when she turned on me and got aggressive with me did I stick to my guns. Commenter 5, if they were helping you out, and it's their house, then they're allowed to have rules, especially if they were supporting you financially. OP, so, I got engaged to my fiancé last year while living with my parents. They were in no way responsible for me financially in any way, shape or form. I paid rent, bills and bought my own food. They didn't pay for anything. A few months, 2-ish, after getting engaged we had an argument that he still wasn't able to stay at the house. She caved and allowed him to sleep in the spare room. This was the last straw and I started looking for a house to buy. I then bought my house outright, though it wasn't as big as I was saving for, and moved into it with my fiancé. Since I wasn't charging him rent or utilities, he wanted to pay for the wedding on his own. I'm from the UK. It's extremely rare for parents to financially support their adult children here. Commenter 6, just be the bigger person / did you ever talk to them calmly? OP, I chose to be the bigger person for 7 years, trying to voice my opinion, and was shut down every time. In my opinion, I needed to do this to show them because they would not listen. And then they called me a liar and that I was making it all up. Surely, as parents, that was their opportunity to be the bigger person and admit wrongdoing? Update post, February 28, 2024, 7.5 months later. So, it's been a while, and my post blew up. I even saw it on Facebook, which is crazy. So, the update. After I let the dust settle, I contacted my brothers and asked for their perception, and they mostly agreed with me. They said exactly what I said, that their girlfriends were staying in their beds at 18, let alone not even allowed to sleep in the house at 22. They mentioned that our parents only mentioned our disagreement once to them in passing when they got home, but once my oldest brother reminded them that it was true that they were allowed partners over as teens, they never brought it up again. It took a couple of weeks, but my mother called me to talk. At first, she maintained that it was probably only a few times they were allowed girlfriends to sleep over, but I was quick to shut it down. Everything she said I had an answer for. I admit, the stress from wedding planning was taking a toll on my self-control. It ended with my mother admitting that she must have forgotten it all, so I just left it. A win is a win. She asked if we could put it all behind us and I said as soon as she apologized then we could. She said that she understands how it may have came across as sexist and favoritism, but she didn't mean it to. They were just overly protective of me being their only girl and didn't realize how that would come across to me. It may not seem like much, but from my mother, that's as good as a bunch of flowers and a please forgive me card. So, the wedding went off without a hitch in November and everyone had a whale of a time. It was nothing short of magical and I had all my family there with me. Couldn't have asked for anything more. So, to everyone saying how my parents were never going to talk to me again and that I was prioritizing petty revenge over a relationship with my parents, please touch grass. If something so small would separate you from your family, that says more about you and your family than it does about me and mine. We all have faults, but come on. Bit dramatic. There are a lot of people calling me a justified asshole, which I kind of get, and a lot saying I'm not the asshole. The ones convinced I'm being a hellspawn on earth just make me laugh. People talking about how I have no respect. I respect your opinion, but I vehemently disagree with it. To me, I was just showing the same respect I was given. Thank you to everyone who was invested. I really needed the validation that I'd done the right thing when my mind was all fuzzy and clouded from stress. General consensus is that I wasn't an asshole, but I was petty, whether you love the pettiness or not, and I can get behind that. Not the most drama-filled update, but I wanted to put a close on all this. Thank you all. It's funny how whenever parents are called out on things they did when you were growing up, they never seem to remember. Good for OP for standing up for herself. Anyway, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.